Good day everyone, welcome to Andy 101. Today we've got a special guest with us all, the Chairman of Asset Management at MA Financial and the longest serving Chairman at Sydney Swans, Richard Colless. G'day
Andy,
Richard.
how are you?
Thank you for coming on the show. So what drove your passion for, AFL? Because you've been,
Well, if you grow up in Perth or Adelaide or Melbourne or Hobart, and you've got an interest in sport, then 95% chance you're going to play Australian football or AFL. So
that's right.
From the age of probably 10 till my early mid-30s, I played football, coached football, administered football.
Yep.
And then I got involved with the as an inaugural director of the WA Football League, which was the body that ran the senior competition. And from there, I was tasked with pursuing a licence for the emerging national competition. And I was by default, I think more than anything else, I was the inaugural chairman of the West Coast Eagles, who ironically we play next week.
Yep.
And then I moved to Sydney and was, I wouldn't say pursued, but people from the AFL came calling and said, you've got experience in this field, you've got to get involved. And after some arm twisting, etc., I got involved, and it's been one of the great experiences of my life.
That's awesome.
But it does come at a cost to perhaps your business activities, and certainly your family pays a bit of a price for it.
Right.
But from a personal point of view, it was and continues to be just a boyhood dream come true, basically.
That is, wow, you're lucky. So talk to me about this 2023 Duanwu Sports Diplomacy Forum that we're going to witness together.
Well, look, it was somewhere in 2019, and we saw some research that indicated that Chinese Australians were starting to feel not unloved, that's not the right term, but they didn't feel as engaged with the broader community as they had traditionally.
Correct.
And you would assume that with the two bouts of COVID, that would have deteriorated even more so. So I kind of set myself a challenge. What can we do to symbolise that the Chinese Australians are as important to the fabric of society as any other ethnic group, or however you want to describe it. And the challenge was to find something that was quintessentially Australian, but in which the Chinese had a significant impact. And lo and behold, it turned out to be Australian football, because Australian football was created in 1858. And the first diaspora of Chinese came in a few years before that to seek their fortune mining for gold, in the central Victorian goldfields. And they were, those two events sort of intersected, and the Chinese became major sort of proponents of the game. They were very, very important as participants, as administrators, as spectators. And while there might have been some racial tension on the goldfields, when it came to match day, everyone was treated exactly the same. There's some extraordinary articles from the Ballarat Times or whatever newspaper it was in the 1850s, and this continued until almost the start of the 20th century. In the 1890s, there was actually a China League that stretched across the colony of Victoria, and it was made up of purely Chinese players.
Wow.
So when I started telling people this, no one could believe it. It was, are you sure?
Yep.
You sure you're not overstating the impact? And I found quite a bit of research from an eminent historian by the name of Dr. Rob Hess, and Rob had he's an academic, but he had a real interest in AFL and a real interest in sort of the impact of the Chinese in Australia, and you put it together, and it was sort of gold, and there was not one person that I've spoken to over the past 3 and a bit years who hasn't questioned it, and has said that is an unbelievable.
I'm loving it already.
That's an unbelievable story. So what we're trying to do, I think more than anything, is probably do 3 or 4 things in one. To demonstrate to domestic Chinese citizens that they're part of the broader Australian community. And the most recent research I've seen from the Lowy Institute indicates that over the last 12 months, the I don't know if you call it the confidence rating, but their contentment rating has gone up 15%. So
that's really good.
Yeah, it is. I think the second thing is to try and get people to understand the enormous impact that the Chinese had on what is by far and away the biggest game in the country. And then I think beyond that, and you know, we're not playing sort of proxy foreign ministers, but I think there is it then goes to the sovereign nations side of it, and I have to say that the Chinese ambassador and the consul general have both been fantastic in their support, and I actually had dinner last night in Canberra with the ambassador, and it was, apart from entertaining, it was just so educational. And his view is in part that to get an insight into the psyche of a population, you've got to understand a number of things. One is, what sports do they play? What sports do they have a fascination with?
The culture.
And he said it was only recently that I kind of grasped that there was this indigenous game. I knew there was rugby, soccer, but when I found out the power of it and the popularity of it, I just said to our people, we've got to understand more about this, because in so doing, we'll understand more about Australians. So
you initiated all this.
Yeah, I did.
How did MA get involved? As in...
Well, I was working with MA, and so the natural, maybe the easiest party to say, look, we're growing our exposure to China by the day.
That's right.
I think this is something that we should be involved in. With COVID twice sort of knocking us, aborting, forcing us to abort the game, we needed to keep things ticking over, and that takes a bit of money, and so MA stepped up, and they were fantastic, well, have been fantastic.
That's really good.
In providing, if you like, working capital without any sort of strings attached. So that's basically, I mean, one, I think they're natural partners, but two, they were the most convenient people to talk to.
That's very honest. That's very honest. So, look, local Chinese Australians in our community here in Australia, including those abroad, have contributed significantly to the economy in Australia. But it's very hard for them. They're still finding it very challenging to adapt to be part of the Australian culture, as you mentioned, the Australian family. Sometimes they're not really recognised. In what ways do you think this event, this AFL, and it's under a Duanwu Festival, which is Dragon Boat Festival theme, can help with that, do you think?
Yeah, no, you raised Duanwu, and I sort of went off on another part of the question. Yeah, what I thought we should do was everyone in Australia in some way is impacted by the Lunar New Year Festival.
Correct. That everyone knows about.
Some of the some of the deep-seated traditions they mightn't get, but just the colour and the movement and the enthusiasm and the optimism almost. People love it. So I thought if we could link it into a major festival, and we're taking a bit of licence because the entertainment is more New Year entertainment than Dragon Boat entertainment. Okay. So I think it's sort of a two-way thing. What we're trying to do, and this is not going to happen next week and that's it. This is the start of, I think, a long-term project, which ultimately I'd like to see obviously continue and grow in Sydney, because the first one is always the hardest. It takes, you wouldn't believe the amount of effort that goes in. The next one will be a lot easier, and eventually there'll be almost a handbook. This is how you do it. So my vision, my aspiration, my aim, my hope is that it will continue to grow in Sydney and be embraced progressively by the broader community and the broader press. But we also then start playing games in Melbourne and all the capital cities. Yep. And when I was talking to the chairman of the AFL, time flies, 6-8 months ago, he said, well, why wouldn't we play a game in Ballarat? Because we now play a couple of AFL games a year in Ballarat. So I think there is within the AFL a real desire to find the right, the sweet spot, if you like.
That's right.
And I think this is pretty much it.
I do know that Premier Li and then Foreign Minister of China, Wang Yi, did come and observe an AFL match.
They came in, it was round 1, 2017. Yep. And it was played at the SCG, where the game's being played on Saturday the 24th. And whether they...
How do you remember those days?
I thought the event itself was a bit shambolic. Yeah. I think one thing I learned, if you're going to run one of these, you've got to be really organised and people have got to have designated seats and so on and so forth. But I thought Premier Li was fantastic, and even speaking in Mandarin, where most people in the room wouldn't have had a clue what he was saying, his body language and everything was... he was quite... very charismatic, and he finished by speaking in English, which he clearly could do. I'm in a difficult position. I don't know who to support today, so he had this scarf, and he sort of opened his jacket, and there he had the scarves of the two teams tied together. So he was saying, I'm agnostic. I'm going, I'm going for both of you. So that was
that's good on him. So apart from the actual competition itself, are there any performances and entertainment on the day?
Yes, we have the Duanwu Lion Dance Association. And they're performing probably from about 3 to 4 outside the SCG. The whole troop is on.
So it's after the competition?
No.
Before the game?
The game starts at 4:35.
Okay, so it's before the game.
Yeah, so from about 3 till 3:45, it'll be in Driver Avenue.
Yep.
There's normally a huge build-up of people. So the idea is that, as I said, it's immersive. The performers and the spectators are sort of almost intermingled, and then for the last bit, people will be in their seats, and the Flying Dragon and all the finale that will take place inside the SCG, just as the teams come out. So I think it's going to be
really quite
extraordinary. Yeah.
So it's on Saturday the 24th of June.
Saturday 24th. Yeah. On the Friday night, the 23rd of June, the AFL is launching a book called Celestial Footy, which was written by an author by the name of Patrick Skeen and funded by the National Foundation for Australia-China Relations. And that in itself that will be sort of like cutting the ribbon. We're off and away. And that actually will be staged here. And we've got, quite a few dignitaries. And then on the Saturday, we've got what we're calling VIP lunch. We've got a senior Australian government minister, the Premier of New South Wales, Chinese
Chris
ambassador, and the Consul General.
Wow.
So, we've got balance between...
You always want balance.
Plus a lot of embassy and consulate general executives, a lot of Australia-China business associations, a lot of Chinese community associations,
media,
a lot of Chinese investors.
It's important. It's important. Thanks so much,
pleasure.
Richard.
No,
Cheers,
thanks,
mate.
Andy.
Thanks for the show.